Let's call her by her name, Mother. This is it. This is it. We can retire the dark academia genre. Retire it. It has been done. It has been accomplished. It has been successful. We have one. We have a book that doesn't glamorize the thing it tries to criticize, that doesn't promote the thing it tries to criticize, that just breaks it down, criticizes it, and destroys it. Did I cry for many, many pages right around the end? Yes, I did. Spoiler alert. When the first professor offered to stay, I started bawling my eyes out. End of spoiler alert. From the very beginning, you feel the goddamn injustice. You just feel it from the beginning because we know from the very beginning that he could have saved his mother and he didn't. We know from the very beginning why that English nanny was there. We know from the very beginning who he is. We know. Everyone knows. We know why he tells him to choose a new name. We know. Everyone knows. From the very beginning, it's very clear what this book is trying to say. And the whole goddamn time, it never goes back. It never becomes less than it is. It always increases. The criticism, the creating the turning the wall transparent, breaking the wall later, all of it, it always increases. The criticism only becomes more complex, more real, more complete, really, of the situation. It never backs down. That's what it is. It never backs down. I have the Poppy War. I've had it on my bed since I finished reading this, and I might just start it. I've been saying that I'm gonna start reading this, but maybe I'll do the Poppy War. I don't know. Maybe I'll do both of them. Who knows? This is gonna be a very rambly review because this book is excellent. It probably will be my favorite book of the year. I don't see how it will be surpassed. I cannot believe I spent this whole time with it released and I didn't read it. Baby Boy here is absolutely going to be a future classic. No doubt in my mind. This is the kind of story that will still be relevant in 100, 200, 400 years. I mean, don't they say that we will only reach gender equality by 2400 or something? Guess we'll be a classic by then. I'm not joking, by the way. I'm not exaggerating. Everything in it, the way that she establishes her characters, the way that she establishes the power dynamics and how the people in power abuse their power, the way that she makes every single character human, down to the people who are abused and still benefit or enjoy their prison. Because that's what it is. All of it, it just seems so realistic, so with so much opportunity to create empathy and to relate to these characters. It's insane. I don't know if I'm even going to be able to describe everything that I want to say. Actually, I have updates and criticism and opinions on my free tier on my Patreon up because I've been updating over there, but it just got to a point where I was just reading it manically. And my edition of the book does not have or the necessity of violence in the title, so I added it right here. You can see it, but it's written here. And this is what I wrote on my Goodreads. If you already follow me there, you would have seen it. I recommended this book to everyone who has ever criticized any kind of protest for turning violent or setting fire to a trash can or breaking a window or something like that. And this is what I was talking to my friends about after we left the movie I'm Still Here, about the military dictatorship in Brazil. It gets to a point where this is what she says in the book, right? It gets to a point where they will only listen when you turn to violence because they need to know that they have something to lose. And I have never seen a more compelling argument to defend the necessity of violence. And you can talk about this with any kind of movement, down to what was it called? The Stonewall Revolts or something. And I saw a lot of people with the whole Gaza situation being yeah, they were just defending themselves. Like the attack was too brutal for there not to be retribution or whatever. And it's like they've been living in that situation for decades. The international aid that exists is just helping them to stay alive, not to get freed of that situation. It gets to a point where what else do they have? You know, when there's an entire world of a civilized society existing outside of those walls, there are people, millions and millions and millions and millions, billions of people living in some kind of freedom, and then no one does anything to help them. And the only reason they are in that situation is because they took in the consequences of someone else's actions, of the issues they were created that led the Jewish people to go there. And it's like, in the mind of someone who grows up in that situation, who is faced with, or at least what they see as absolutely no alternative, what are they supposed to do? Just bend down and kiss the feet of the people who oppress them? Just accept to live a life half-lived with no freedom? Like, what are they supposed to do? And I feel like this book illustrates it in such a beautiful and easy to understand way. And this is one of my points of this video, is about fantasy books and the absolute neglect and and how they are eaten from the more serious critical spaces among literature, because it is like a discussion still to this day, the way that fantasy books are not taken seriously and are not considered important parts of the literary world and are not considered in academia or in serious awards. And I know there are a lot of good awards for science fiction and stuff like that, but I mean, come on. And it's just the hypocritical stance that fantasy stories don't have anything meaningful to add and are just entertainment and fairies going around or whatever. But I mean, the potential for storytelling within fantasy is insane. And what R.F. Kuang does with this book is absolutely genius, because she creates a resource, the silver, that is the center of this world. A resource that doesn't really exist in our world. I mean, we have the word for silver, but what silver means here is something completely different. She created a new resource just to illustrate the point of how ridiculous it is to subjugate and oppress millions and millions of people just so that one nation can have unlimited access to this resource. Brilliant. And it was done in a fantasy book. And the fact that she needed such a thing, like such a mechanism that could only exist in a fantasy book to illustrate this point so easily, is like amazing. And it makes sense that she would resort to something like this, because when it comes to real resources, there are still to this day being taken out of poor countries with the exploitation of sad poor countries' people. The poor people from those countries are being exploited for those resources to be taken out from those countries and brought to the free world, to the civilized world, to the first world nations. Still happening today. It's just not with a magical silver, is whatever other resources they need or we need, like oil or copper. She created a magical resource to illustrate this point to perfection. And just the fact that it is fantasy, and the fact that it is a fantasy setting, doesn't really matter at this point. It doesn't matter. Think about some of the authors that have Nobel Prizes. They write in speculative fiction, in magical realism. What's the difference between that and this? Not much when you think about it, right? But yeah, another point that I want to make about this book is just how ingenious she was, right? Because the whole time, I mean, you even have the title. Let me read you the title. Because the title is Babel, or the Necessity of Violence, and then there's like a subtitle, a second title that says An Arcane History of the Oxford Translators' Revolution. So you have the impression that you are reading a history manual. but you are not reading a history manual because it's written as in any fiction book, with narration and dialogue and speech. But then at the end of many, many pages, baby girl R.F. Kuang, the woman that you are, she adds footnotes. And even though the narration and the style of the book is written like any other novel, these footnotes are what give the historical manual aspect to the whole story. Because you will, in any given page, be witnessing some form of misinformation, of misinterpretation of things, some form of racism, some form of racist stance by one character or another. And then there's a little asterisk or a little cross, and baby girl R.F. Kuang, the historian that you are, is just correcting them on the footnotes. No anger, no annoyance, just factual evidence correcting them. I mean, evidence mostly of this world, correcting their opinions, correcting their imperialistic views and their racist views. It's a gold mine. These footnotes are what make the goddamn book. And then you get to the end. Spoiler alert. Spoiler. Then you get to the end and you meet this character that is writing the accounts of the revolution, and he speaks to everyone and asks them, tell me the most relevant stuff you think is important to your story. And then it's never said. It's never said that that account, that record is what we read, but it is what we read. And the reason we read it from the perspective of baby boy Robin is because he was the catalyst to everything. He was the one who, in the end, decided to take the goddamn tower. And this is what I'm saying, like, end of spoiler alert. This is what I'm saying, like, every single decision she made in this book was so goddamn good. Like, maybe I'll have to read it again to spot some less positive things, but I just can't think of a single one. I can't think of the time that I was reading this book. I can't think of one single time, one single moment where I was disappointed by any of it. Any of it, all of it made sense from the beginning to the end. There was never a fail in the momentum, in the pace. There was never a fail in the characters, in the characterization, in the decisions that she made. Everything made freaking sense. Down to goddamn Letty. She received the Blackwell's Book of the Year, British Book Awards Fiction Book of the Year, and the Daily Mail Best Book of 2022. I'm assuming these are real awards. It's not enough. I need to read the rest of her books. I need to know I need to understand if the quality that I found in Babel is in all of her other stuff. Because if it is, and every book this girl, this woman, this person puts out in the world from now on is as good as this, if the quality in the past catalog and future catalog is as good as this, I'm going to start advocating for a goddamn Nobel. I don't think the world is ready to understand the importance of fantasy stories, especially fantasy stories like this. I'm not talking about fairy porn here. Fantasy stories like this. But I am ready to recognize it. I am ready, and I am standing here ready to march for this woman to get a Nobel. I need to read the rest of her catalog. I need to understand if the quality, if this amount of quality in this story is present in all the other stories she's written, or the majority of them. But yeah, I was so impressed. I was so impressed by this book. I don't think... Because, like, I read a lot of classical books or, like, books from big-time authors who get a lot of recognition, and I recognize it here. Like, it's here. I felt it in my bones. Like, I felt about reading this book in a similar way as I felt when I was reading Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, or Blindness by Saramago. Not exactly like Blindness. Blindness is on another level. But Never Let Me Go for sure. Like, she's capable of not getting lost in the love she has for these characters. She's capable of making decisions that are about the story rather than about her emotions towards these people. And the story that she tells, the overall story that she tells, is really much more about humanity and human values and the limits of humanity rather than it is about the specific characters that she talks about. And that's what you see in Kazuo Ishiguro books and in a lot of other important authors' books, that they explore humanity and human values and human life and the limits of it much more than they explore certain characters. Like, the exploration of a character of a story is to explore this side of humanity, this human condition, and all of the mistakes and all of the bad things we do and all the good things we do, and to serve as a criticism to aspects of society. And it's here. It's so here. I'm gonna stop talking about it. I'm just really impressed by this book. I'm really impressed by R.F. Kuang. It's the first book I read from her, and I'm eyeing the Poppy War right there. I'm eyeing it. Like, I'm so eyeing it. But yeah, I have to decide if I'm going to start this Baby Boy, or if I'm going to go for the Poppy War, or maybe I was looking at it. Like, I'm looking at this that I've wanted to read since I read The Turn of the Screw, and I'm looking to this that I keep seeing online. Let's see what I decide. Let's see. Maybe I'll read all of them, because that's what I do all the time. But anyway, this was my very messy review of the Babel. The way that I'm talking about this book as if it's a Bible. This is my review of the... I was going to say it again! This is my review of Babel. If I get more organized thoughts about this, I will come back to you. If you want to hear some of my organized thoughts that I already put in writing, go to my free tier in my Patreon. It's there. And yeah, I'll see you later with another review. I'm really getting really into Close to the Wild Heart. I was a bit tired of it a while back, but now I'm getting into it. So I feel like that might be the next review, Near the Wild Heart. Let's see. I will see you next week, potentially Thursday. Tuesday. Bye, guys.